You're listening to the Reinvest Podcast, where each Tuesday we will show you how to reclaim, reconnect, and refocus your life by bringing you the top real estate professionals in the industry. We'll pull back the curtain so you can implement these tools and tactics to build generational wealth. Your hosts, Garrett Gatton and Seth Simonillo. Hey guys, thanks for jumping on and listening to another episode of the Reinvest Podcast, episode number 76.
One of the greatest podcasts in the world.
The GOAT.
If you don't look up the rank, you can just believe me.
Yeah, don't want to look up the rank. Just believe us. And I feel like anymore, people just kind of self-subscribe themselves that way, you know, like greatest blank, and there's no way to validate anything. So
exactly.
Nonetheless, here we are. But no, exciting episode today. Part of what we're after for this for the podcast is taking big concepts, high level stuff, bringing it to you so that you can have tools to your tool belt that will give you success in real estate investing, be it passive or active. And I think today is going to accomplish that. So give us a little context to what we're going to jump in today, Seth.
The nice thing about real estate is that there are a lot of ways to do it. There's a lot of ways to make money. There's a lot of strategies. And then one that we don't even consider very often being in America is actually investing outside of America. So we got a couple guys on today. We got Martin Papp and we got Tyler. Tyler, what's your last name? I see it. Jordan. Sorry, man.
Tyler Jordan.
Such low-hanging fruit.
Good.
We got you guys on with us today. Go ahead and say hi to our audience, and maybe Tyler, you can go first, introduce yourself, and then Martin, go ahead.
For sure. No, I appreciate the intro. I'm Tyler Jordan. It's all good. Everyone gets it mixed up. It's two first names. I don't know what my parents were thinking. But I'm an Australian. I currently live over here in California, USA. And I've been doing, developments or in real estate in some capacity for around a decade now. I started very, very young. I started when I was about 15 with my father, getting into fix and flips, and then
in Australia.
In Australia, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Fun fact: Australia is both a country and a continent.
Australasia is the continent.
And
when you put yourself out there, you just don't.
No,
always
another fun
get there.
fact. Another fun fact: you guys have like the highest concentration of poisonous reptiles and insects in the world.
And we also have the least dense population in the
right, because the middle of
mile.
The middle is just straight desert, right? Just uninhabitable.
Yeah.
People like live on the coastal areas.
Yeah, so I mean, essentially, 98% of the population lives within 3 miles of the beach.
Wow.
And I mean, we've got the same population as Florida, but across the entire country, which is bigger than the United States.
Whoa.
So there's not much going on out there, but where it is happening, it's happening.
It's happening.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, yeah, awesome accent, by the way. And this is the first time that we've done kind of a 4-way Zoom podcast recording. So super excited. And Martin, you've got kind of an interesting story as well. So give us a little context to who you are and what you're doing.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. I'm Martin Papp. I'm from Colorado. I currently also live in Southern California with Tyler. We run our company, the Nova Haus, together. I started out getting into international real estate through living abroad. So when I was graduating from college in 2008, wasn't the best time to be, in the job market. Things kind of shit hit the fan, if I can say that. And I was reading this book called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. Highly recommend it. And it was a story talking about how people's success is highly dependent upon their environment. When you were born, where you were born. It's no coincidence that, like Bill Gates and, Steve Jobs and all these guys were born around the same time in the same and built businesses in the same area. And so I'm reading this and being like, well, I need to put myself in the right environment, go somewhere that's growing, something that's going to challenge me. So I decided to move to China. And I went to Beijing and Shanghai, actually traveled all around the country, got married there in 2014. I have a 7-year-old son, and we built a business there called Papp's Tea. And that is a tea company that sells all types of loose leaf teas, blends, herbal blends to restaurants and hotels, currently in over 400 locations across China. That's still my main source of income. But we started making money. It's a profitable business, and we started investing in real estate, started getting into rentals, abroad in China, also in Thailand. Also did fix and flips, and eventually we came out to the United States and started investing here as well, where I met Tyler. And yeah, I think that brings us up to current day.
Yeah, real quick. So on your website, Martin, there's like pictures of you, like it looks like you're performing with a guitar.
Yeah,
looks like you also may have been on a TV show.
Yeah, Martin.
Maybe
Martin
you were
very casually skipped over some juicy info there.
Because from the outside looking in, it almost looks like you were like some sort of Chinese, like a celebrity in China.
Yeah, celebrity is a strong word, but I was a performing artist. Yeah, so I always loved playing music. I got my guitar right here. I've had a band in high school. You know, I was enjoying life, and when I went to China, I had a guitar and a backpack, and that was it. And my goal was to learn Chinese. I speak fluent Mandarin now,
Nice.
Relatively speaking fluent. So 如果有任何人在你们的 podcast 可以讲中文，我们也可以讲中文. So that is what I started doing on.
I thought he was having a stroke right there. I didn't realize you were actually speaking Mandarin.
Yeah. So my point is
it always takes a second or two.
My Chinese started getting me places, and one of those things that allowed me to do was to perform in Chinese. And so I started doing some shows on television, getting interest from some agencies and a record label industry, or a record label business in Beijing, signed a 3-year contract with me. And I toured all around China, working with them, going on national television, speaking and performing in massive stadiums. And we're talking about like cities you've never heard of. You know, I was like in places in Inner Mongolia and Xinjiang and Jiangxi, and we'd play in these stadiums with like 50,000 people. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, but it's just the whole scale of everything is just mind blowing.
Well, that's awesome. Do you feel like that's kind of what helped you get your business out there in China?
Absolutely. I mean, it's not very common to have, you know, a white guy in China, you know, being a performing artist, speaking Chinese. And so really it was a 101 in branding and being a pioneer in a new space and trying to figure out how to do business. So that really was, for me, the first entrepreneurial kind of endeavor was being a performing artist. You are the product and you have to craft that. And that led me to leverage all those contacts and the following that I had to eventually start Papp's Tea, which definitely helped a lot. So I went and got venture capital funding in Shanghai. There's no way I would have been able to do that with a lot of the contacts and connections that I made. And so, yeah, eventually decided that music was a moment in time for me. I wanted to build, you know, more residual kind of wealth, something that wasn't paycheck to paycheck, performance to performance. So I started the tea company, got VC funding from that, and rest is history.
Wow. Not to be confused with Papp's Blue Ribbon beer brand.
Well, that's Papp's.
Yeah,
like,
but to the untrained ear, it sounds very similar.
You're right.
So I think what's interesting. What's that?
I said I wouldn't mind owning a beer brand either.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
alcohol is lucrative. So
I heard a wild story about somebody had some. Were you a part of this? Somebody was telling me that there was a family that resurfaced and had some kind of like royalty rights to Budweiser. That's what it used to be back in Germany, like, you know, where it came from. And it was like this crazy kind of rags to riches story. They dusted off like this old document that gave them rights to it. So not me, obviously, but be super cool to do that.
That's the stuff that we're all searching for when we do flips.
Yeah.
When we go in and find like a beat up house and we're pulling the walls apart. You pull the drywall off. You're like, where are my documents to
those
to
stock certificates?
Right.
No, so
or just some gold behind the wall. That would be convenient.
We had a home inspector find a baseball in a crate, okay, with like some old practice balls. It was in a metal sleeve, and it was signed by like Mickey Mantle and like the New York Yankees, like all-star team from like the Dream era, and it was valued at like over $700,000, and the family did not sell it. It was pretty wild. That happened in Ohio. So, but we've got a lot of really interesting stuff to jump into that I want to make sure that we uncover. So today, what we're going to dive into is kind of the international business investing scene. Martin, you had created a brand that was totally in a different marketplace, a different part of, Eastern culture, very different than Western culture, found success in that. Tyler, civil engineering, doing development remotely. You guys are leveraging some really unique principles, technologies that I think people can apply to their businesses. It's kind of wild that we live in a global marketplace, right? Because when people think emerging markets, they're thinking Austin. They're thinking places geographically within the U.S. You're playing in a different sandbox. So talk to us about kind of the vision. What gave you the confidence to be able to do things out of your country? And then what principles were you using that gave you guys success in those markets?
For sure. I think I want to kick this off here with the concept of a global marketplace, like you said. And when we talk about doing, there's this whole trend of remote work and people working from everywhere and traveling everywhere. And when it comes to that, we kind of just think we can go anywhere and we can do everything and we can figure it out. But when it comes to real estate or when it comes to business or whatever it might be, all of a sudden we put these concrete walls up and we pretend as if it's just this foreign concept that just cannot be done, when in reality it's identical to developing here. It's identical to developing anywhere. It's all relationship based. It's all a process from start to finish. It's just in a different location. It's nothing's really changing that dramatically. So
people are still people at the end of the day, is what you're saying.
At the end of the day, people are
business.
still people. Bricks are still bricks. Timber's still timber. Tourism's still tourism.
And I love also what you were alluding to is technology has allowed a lot of this. And so it makes sense that kind of in the old mindset, of even 20 years ago, that it would be very difficult to live a life where you're managing properties abroad. But that's not the case anymore. And, Tyler's a great example of literally fully remote from ground up building duplexes and not even ever seeing the property. And he's got one listed on the market now that he hasn't even visited yet. Wow. So the technology, I think, is not something that we should take for granted. It allows you to have so much broader scope and the type of work you can do. Having said that, there's obviously inherent risks with that. And so you need to have principles and processes that can mitigate the risks of doing that kind of remote work or not being on the ground all the time. But the good news is that the tools are there, and as long as you kind of have a good head on your shoulders, there is a methodology that you can follow that Tyler and I implement. We have a playbook essentially of the stages of how we go about selecting a property, identifying the right partners to work with, from legal, architectural, contracting, subcontractors, property agents, property managers. All of that is a fairly simple, straightforward process. And yet, for some reason, most people, when they go abroad, that's not how they go and buy a property. The way that most people buy property is they're walking down a street in, say, Koh Samui, and there's a little realtor, shop, and they've got little pretty pictures of properties on the window, and you're like, oh, that looks cool. Like, I'd love to look at that property. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly the wrong place to start, because you're going to, and I'm actually stealing this from Tyler's analogy.
One of the last things on our list.
Yeah. So most people go and find a property first. What we do is almost the opposite. Property is the very last thing that we select. Everything else is everything we start with is from a top-down approach of, let's identify the right markets. Let's use data. Let's use technology. AirDNA. Oh my God. Amazing resource. And not only is it to the US, you get enterprise AirDNA data and you have the whole world at your fingertips. I can go in and tell you exactly what the average daily rate, is for a property in Ubud, Bali. I can tell you exactly what the property trends are in Costa Rica, Belize. And you don't have to be a scientist to figure this out. There's services there doing this for you. From there, once we identify markets, we find comps that we like. We see properties that are doing really well in the short-term rental market. And guess what? Everyone has their contact information available because they want you to book these places. Right. So we contact the Airbnb hosts. We ask them, candidly, like, hey, we're also interested in being an Airbnb property in the area. Could you tell us your experience? Would you share the costs of what it costs to build or it costs to operate an Airbnb here? What's it like? Is there anything that I should be aware of? And you're going to get people that don't reply. You're going to get people that are saying, F off. I don't
Right.
it's competition. But you'll also get people that this is their life. And they want to share their story. They're happy to help.
It's surprising how many people not only say yes, but throw information at you. I mean, we've had people, other property owners within a mile of where we're about to build and be their probably biggest competitor, if not bigger. And they're just like line item by line item, everything about how they operate. They get on calls, they take you through the back end of everything. It's a very different culture over there. The culture over there is very much like, let's all come together, let's all partner, and let's all just build this up, rising tide. Which is,
depending on which culture. Depending on which culture you're talking about.
Right. But
I would say
for the most part, it's foreign concept. In America, it's dog eat dog world.
Right.
Because a lot of time you're reaching out to other expats. You're reaching out to other people that have taken the plunge to leave the United States and go build a beach house in Thailand or a beach house in Costa Rica. And so when you reach out to them, they see the similar story and you have an immediate connection. And so there's tons of resources if you ask for it. And then with the technology like Loom, like Zoom, the amount of information that we can convey and express and develop relationships with, that couldn't be done 10 years ago. No way. But you can do it now. And in fact, I know almost all our investors actually have all been through developing deep Zoom relationships, not even in person.
Yeah. What you're describing is like dizzying for people. I think so. First of all, just to catch people up too, Nova Haus, that's what you guys do now. In Latin America, those are some markets that you're focusing on currently, buying and establishing luxury, high-end, short-term rentals. The
question is why?
Yeah, that is a good question.
Why do that? Well, because there's so much better ROI going abroad where there's low cost of build and you can still charge premium rental rates. So the ROI on these things makes it worth it. We're talking about 20% to 30% IRR on a sale of a property in 5-6 years. You're also talking about annual dividends, rental yields as high as 15 to 20%. So you can't get that in the US anymore. That's why we changed.
While we're on this, why don't we talk about the strategy, I guess, of even what you're doing? Because you had mentioned even a sale in 5 to 6 years. So you're going to these places, and right now you're targeting Latin America. And you said you have one in Costa Rica right now, or you're building in Costa Rica. So you're gonna do the heavy lifting and the legwork of identifying the players, identifying the builders, developing this property, and then you keep it as a short-term rental in perpetuity, or in 5 to 6 years, is there a strategy to sell and exit and return all the investor capital and kind of roll it over and do it again, or what's the strategy?
You want to take it, Tyler?
Yeah, the legwork really is in the relationships. So for instance, the last almost 2 years now, before we even launched any funds or any of this, me and Martin spent building those relationships so that those are ready to go once we're ready to go. And we're doing 8 properties in Costa Rica in 2024. And those properties are from the ground up. So you've got a 2-year development period. And then once those are operational, you've got a cash out refinance in year 3, where investors get 100% of their capital back. You then are receiving dividends yearly. And then there will be a expected sale in year 7. Now, that is based on performance. If the properties are doing so well that it's obnoxious to even think about a sale, then we go back to our investors and say, are you wanting to stay in? Are you wanting to get out? If you want to get out, we can buy you out, and we'll probably look at keeping this. But yeah, essentially 2 exits over a 7-year period, as well as dividends along the way.
So is the demand for these predominantly tourist driven?
Correct. Yes, it's almost all tourist driven. We cater to an interesting demographic. Myself and Martin are our own customers. You guys hosting this are our customers. Essentially, groups from the US are our main sort of customer base. People who are coming over for corporate retreats, or they've just got a group of friends all interested in the same thing, and they want to do an event there or a workshop, or even just a high net worth family that wants to rent out an entire place that's on the. We border a weird line where we're kind of almost too big to be an Airbnb, but almost too small to be a resort. So it's an interesting demographic.
I'd like to take a second just to really talk about this target market that we're targeting, and there is a growing movement that you can see before your eyes. It's the millennials, it's the Gen Zs, of people that are no longer seeing a work-life balance as in, I work really hard and then I don't take a vacation for 2 weeks every year. It doesn't have to be that mundane. People want to have immersive experiences even while they're working. And so there's a whole new segment in industry that's being created called bleisure, which is the business and leisure travel. And so people that are going to a conference, for example, that doesn't have to be just a 2-day there, 2-day back, extended a week, stay another 5 days, go travel, go see the places. Like, that's what we call bleisure travel. And that is got an enormous amount of growth, over 132% from 2019 to 2023. And we continue to see a 20% compounded annual growth expected to 2033. Throwing out a lot of numbers there, but the point is that the way people travel, the way they play, the way they work is changing. So Tyler and I, great example of this. Like, we travel around the world. We still have to get on our Zoom calls. We still got to do our business, but we're playing at the same time. And so that tourism, those hotspots, there's kind of a few places you can kind of pick out in the world where this is really taking off. One of them is places like Costa Rica, Mexico, Bali, Thailand, digital nomads, remote workers, corporate retreats. These are places where people go, they want to bring their laptop, they want to be connected, they want to have good Wi-Fi, and yet they want to go surfing in the afternoon. And that's exactly the type of market that we're building properties for, specifically to not only just be single family homes converted to Airbnbs. That's not going to cut it anymore these days. You could do that, but you're going to get average returns. So we're designing properties with all the bells and whistles, full amenities that are designed for those immersive experiences. So we're talking ice bath, sauna, open air gyms. We're talking about podcast studios, even in our Manuel Antonio property. So
we're trying to sell us on it, aren't you? You're trying to get us there.
He dangled the carrot there. Podcast studio, guys.
We're dangling it for ourselves. We want this too, and we know that people want it. When I book Airbnbs, I'm always looking at the kitchen table, being like, is that a good table that I could work on? Like, I need to see like if that is going to be my good workstation. And I'm realizing, oh my God, that means that if people would take the effort, and granted, it's a lot of effort, but if they take the effort to design properties with a certain customer in mind, you can create amazing places, and those are going to be the places that are going to get you, booked out 12 months in advance on an Airbnb platform.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. But let me push back and play devil's advocate, okay? Because I'm thinking, man, international markets. Okay, you've got data sources like AirDNA, but there's always the wisdom that you get from other people about like, hey, stay in your lane, do something, invest in what you understand. So how, like, if somebody pushed back and said, hey, what if you don't really know the Costa Rica market well enough? Like, what if you're making some big assumptions on that? How do you guys feel confident that you're jumping into a market that's not just out of state, but out of country, to build a model off of that? And I'm sure you have an answer for it. I know you do, or else I wouldn't ask it, but that's where my mind goes.
Yeah, I'd love to answer this before Tyler gets all over it too. This is all about the legwork that we were talking about from a top-down approach. So I'm not trying to be an expert on the local Costa Rica submarkets. I'm working with the people that are experts. And so that's where it says, don't start with finding a property. You don't know which property to find.
Right.
That is not your decision to make. Go find the people that know. And so that's where we first, so for example, what we do in Costa Rica, we do this in Thailand as well, is we start with finding amazing properties that are booked with great data or just beautiful, stunning places. And we ask, who is the architect? Who are the builders? We go and then reach out to them, make those relationships, tell them what we want to do. We ask them, hey, Do you think it's a good idea to be doing a short-term rental here? Does that make sense? Where would you invest? We go to the top legal companies that also then work with these attorneys, work with these contractors that are used to dealing with real estate deal transactions, hundreds or if not thousands, depending on the size of the firm. They know where you should go. So Manuel Antonio is a great example. We were looking at some other places, and once you start talking to the builders and the architects and the contractors to find out where they're investing, that's where you should go.
Gotcha.
And so it's really relying on taking the legwork of pre-breaking ground, pre-acquisition of a property, and building the right teams that then guide you through those steps to make sure you're investing exactly the way a smart investor would invest in that country.
When you put it like that, it's really not, it doesn't sound that much different than what you would do if you were going to invest out of state. I mean, it's finding the right team. It's finding the right members, the lenders. It's finding the contractors, the handyman, the property managers. It's a kind of sounds like a similar process.
It's almost identical.
So
I mean, I would argue if that there was anything different. It's just a different amount of miles from where you are.
having been in the syndication space and kind of understanding that model, you had said that you get 100% of investor capital back through a refinance. So who are these banks that are just jumping at the opportunity to do some international, and maybe they're local banks to those areas? I don't know. How are you doing that through a refinancing, getting all the investor capital back?
It is through regional banks. So we're working with Costa Rican lenders, and those can be either private or they can be, private banks. These are conversations that we already have in advance. We know the rates. We know what would be required. It's one of the reasons that I'm applying for residency in Costa Rica, mid process of it. And so a lot of I will say this, this is part of the research that goes into doing and selecting a property, is not every country is the same. So for example, refinancing in Costa Rica, yeah, you can do it. Go to Thailand, it's not going to happen. Thailand's going to have to be all cash.
Wow.
And unless you find an international lender, which then you're talking to big banks like HSBC or some international, lending that's going to have a much more rigorous requirements. But to answer your question, in a short answer is that we work with regional lenders that know the markets. They're comfortable in that space. And that's also why we wait till year 3 to do any type of debt, because then we have a track record and we base the lending on the property's performance, not on having to have some amazing guarantor in the area or something like that.
So what's worst case scenario? Let's say you get through the 2 years of developing another property in Costa Rica, or your 8 properties, and you go out to the regional bank and you get all the investor capital back, and then something catastrophic happens, such as a worldwide pandemic that shuts down everything and closes off travel. I mean, how lean can you guys operate after a refi, and kind of still stay above foot with your debt service with these properties? I guess I'm saying, how low can your occupancy be? Maybe that's a better way to put it.
Sure. Occupancy rates of 40-50% approximately get us across the line. The argument that you're making is a very reasonable argument, but it can be applied to the US as well.
Right.
So it's really like in any situation, making sure that you have healthy margin. And that's another reason why I hesitate to do a lot of stuff in the US. And I'm not trying to deter people that do US real estate. It's a great business, but it's competitive. It's hard. You get really down into like the fine numbers of 1% can make or break a deal. With these emerging markets in, I'm going to say Costa Rica, for example, there's a lot more room for error because of the higher margins. Because of the higher margins, you have the ability to make more mistakes and still be okay. You also have massive property appreciation as well in these emerging markets. So as long as you're picking good locations, and let's say the property isn't working out, that resale value is always going to be there. And again, this is true in the US too, but like worst comes to worst, you liquidate a property. And that's something that we've talked about as a plan B. If there was ever any issues with lending, well, then we'd have to sell off part of the portfolio.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's, anybody who's got an airtight business strategy, there's multiple exits, right? There's kind of like, here's what we could do, but then there's contingencies, and those contingencies have contingencies. And you guys have thought through that, which is very prudent. So I'm excited. We would love to follow, just like as you guys update kind of the construction process of these two that are in the works here. Are you guys pretty actively kind of dripping stuff on your social media?
Yeah, very very actively, and it's only going to ramp up. We're
Nice.
putting out probably, I dare say, probably 50 to 100 pieces of content a week.
wow.
Across socials on both our personals and our business accounts.
You're setting a high bar for us, Tyler.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's about six or seven pieces a day going out on mine alone, and then three on the.
Tyler is more active than I am. It's something that he's really good at.
Good. Nice.
Yeah,
okay.
Awesome.
We're going to jump into our smaller pocket segment. So, gentlemen, go ahead and tell us about a story, maybe each of you personally, about a deal in real estate that went wrong. Or maybe it's not as much real estate as business applicable, but a deal that went wrong. What happened? What did you learn from it?
Do you want to kick this off, Martin, or you want me to?
I'm happy to if you want a second.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So I had a very big learning curve in the commercial real estate space as an operator. And this might be something that isn't always talked about, but I think is an interesting point that I think listeners would find fascinating. And that is, I was opening cafes and retail shops in China. I was going into these really cool areas where you see lots of foot traffic, lots of people. You got your Starbuckses, you got your Louis Vuittons, and I'm leasing spaces in these areas that are very highly prized, and renovating them, working with contractors to create these really cool customer experience kind of spaces. And it absolutely was impossible for me to be able to make a profit in those spaces because the rents were way too high. And I ended up closing all the storefronts. And so now our business is totally B2B, and we sell to restaurants and hotels, no longer operating their own stores. And the fascinating point of all this is that over the experience of learning about why it was so hard to make these places work, is that most of the time when you're in really compact, high rental areas, so we're talking about our downtowns, your Singapores, your Beijings, like the really popular spots, most of those businesses are not making money.
What?
Oh, wow.
Those are loss leaders. So those brands will take a loss and operate at a loss on those stores because they need to be there.
Yeah.
Because that's marketing.
Perception.
That's insane.
And then they make all their money through the other channels. So that would be through their stores in second and third tier cities that are a lot cheaper, but the price of the Louis Vuitton bag is still the same.
Right.
So you make all your money in these cheaper markets or in these cheaper locations. And then all the places that are like everybody wants to go to, there's a good chance that none of those storefronts are making any money because the only people making money are the landlords there. So if you're in the landlord side of it, great. But do not get trapped in thinking that if I'm going to do a one-off kind of restaurant or shop, I need to be in the best and baddest place, and I'm going to have to pay for it. You need to be ready for the fact that unless you have scale, unless you're opening 20 restaurants, unless if you only can do one, you need to make sure that the numbers make sense and don't get seduced just by the location. You have to think about what the price point is. And if I had done the mental math at the time, like I would have realized that there's no way, like I would have to get like 200 people in every 5 minutes, and we would have to be, they'd have to be ordering like, $30 worth of tea. And it's just unrealistic. But you get seduced into it because you got the opportunity to be in that space. Ooh, the tenant's moving out, and so you rush and try to get something going,
dude,
without realizing that most of these areas don't make you money.
Yeah, that is great advice. And it's kind of knowing your business. Do you feel like when you stepped away from that, I mean, do you feel like the business to business, more remote model has actually been better for you?
100%. You nailed it. the moment that I was able to let go of the sexy ego of I want my own store, and we went a little bit leaner, our business became so much healthier. Started making more money, more dividends, allows me to go out and buy real estate that actually makes money.
So it comes down to this: sexy and broke, or discreet and wealthy. You choose. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sexy and broke.
And you can be sexy. You can be sexy, and that can be good for business. But make sure it's written down as a marketing expense.
Yeah.
Not
right.
as this is my business
driver.
model.
Yeah. That's really good. That's good. All right, Tyler, you're gonna have to top that. So
yeah, I don't know why I chose to go second. That was polite, and now I'm shot myself in the foot. Mine is not in commercial or retail in any way. Mine's actually in residential space, and I've got two of them. And the first one, and they're both quick, but the first one is that I got into single family residential property when I was 18, because that's not only the American dream, but it's also the Australian dream and the English dream. And it's just the worldwide dream, right? And I was sold that dream and got into it and was negatively geared. I was like, this sucks. I got into this to get rental, yield. And so I got another one. And then I was like, this double sucks. I'm just paying twice as much mortgage and I'm twice as much at a loss now. And then, got into smaller multifamily, duplexes, quadplexes. And I was like, this is just the same thing, just multiplied again. And so that was a big learning curve for me on the residential side, is chasing a dream that other people are telling you is the dream and not what is actually the dream. I was chasing cash flow in places where everyone who doesn't have real estate tells you there's cash flow. And then on that side of things, a recent, I'm not going to say it's a horror story, but a recent one that hit me was I had a build that completed in February of 2023. Again, fully remote. I've never seen it. It's actually the property that's just hit the market. And brand new build. It finished on February the 8th, and we had tenants move in February the 12th. Wow. And we had the builders go in to do their 3-month inspection of the property after 3 months. And I got a call from the builders, and they were like, hey, have you got a minute? I was like, yeah, what's up? And they're like, yeah, the tenants that you've just had in, that you've, done background checks on and you've really vetted them, I don't think they're looking after your property. I was like, to what extent? And he's like, it's trashed. I was like, what do you mean? Brand new 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom place. They had 3 kids that they didn't tell me about. The kids had, what do you guys call it? Sharpie, permanent marker, all through the inside walls of the property. The kids had kicked holes in all the walls. There's coffee stains all through the carpets. All the outside drains, they'd taken the drains off and they packed rocks and mud into all the drains.
It sounds like vandalism.
Yeah. So this is a 3-month-old property, and the builders doing the inspection called me to tell me this. So that was a fun one in terms of the one time that I got involved as a landlord emotionally. So I am a huge proponent for just handing properties off if you're doing long-term leases. I am so highly emotional, and as soon as someone opens their mouth, I'm like, I want to help you. That's all I care about, right? And as soon as I started, speaking, they brought me multiple tenants, and there was one lady who was, going through a bit of shit, and I was like, I need to help her. I need to have her in here. I need to give her this opportunity and help her out. And it was, the one time you let emotions in, and they, especially in business, you let emotions take control of you.
So what's the process? Where was that rental at? Was that in Australia?
That's in Australia, in a place called Maitland, which is in New South Wales.
Can you just evict a tenant there, or were you able to get them out?
Yeah, we had to give them another 3 months before we could get them out. But I luckily only signed a 6-month lease with them to begin with.
Man,
golly.
that is there's good lessons there too. Just having being removed so that someone can answer more objectively on your behalf is huge. And that's why, we do a lot of property management stuff and encourage people to do that, kind of stay in your lane type stuff. All right, guys. Well, we're going to transition into our last show segment called our little nugget. So what's one practical takeaway or piece of advice that our listeners can implement to their real estate investing businesses? Could be personal development, business development. It's pretty open-ended.
I've got one. And it's something that I say every single day in probably at least every second conversation I have. And it's, I would rather pivot than ponder. And it's this fallacy that people have where they need to find the right deal and they need to make sure everything's perfect and they need to, all the stars have to be aligned. And they need to have all of the process refined perfectly before they can begin. And for me, it's completely backwards because you can't refine anything that you haven't started. So for me, it's you need to get in first and start, then you can refine and pivot and find better deals and things like that. Think of real estate investing and quite literally anything in life like a missile. A missile doesn't launch and then it just is in the air and it hits its target. It launches and every like millisecond it has these tiny little adjustments to the course of its to where it's going. And that's the same as you. You need to launch your real estate career in some way, shape, or form, even if it's the wrong decision. Jump. And then you can pivot from there and build. But I would rather pivot than ponder is my nugget.
I appreciate the missile analogy because that's how all my missiles work. You know what I mean? Is I can just kind of course correct those. No, I say it tongue in cheek, but my father-in-law, I don't have any missiles. So if
Disclaimer.
If the NSA is listening to this, my father-in-law, he always says that you can't steer a ship that's not moving. So let's just all have a moment of silence for that. Yeah.
I'm so glad that we've chatted. I am going to use that. I'm always looking for like the right analogy, and that's it.
You had a good one.
Yours was good. Garrett was just trying to steal your thunder, so sorry about that.
No, well, you've stolen it. I'm throwing mine out. That is, I like that twice as much as I like my own.
That's funny.
Thank you.
Yeah. Martin, what do you got for us, man?
Piece of advice for real estate. If this is for people that want to get into it or involved in it or thinking about getting into it, correct?
Yeah. Or someone that's already in it. Yeah, all the above.
Yeah, I mean, I'm usually not a loss for words, but this is a hard one to pinpoint one
or even
one item.
Business development, even if it was kind of something from starting your business and
I would say that one thing that's been a blessing working with Tyler is he's so good at providing support and instilling confidence in me and what we're doing. And I think a lot of people, and this is partly, people that are ambitious, they want to do things, they suffer from imposter syndrome. And it's this, again, if we need to explain what that is, it's the idea that you don't think you're good enough. You don't have enough experience in it. You don't have the intelligence or, the portfolio. And it's a easy way for your dreams to die if you're always stuck in that kind of mindset. And so I think one thing that I can just say from personal experience that's helped a lot is not doing things by myself. It's by doing things with great people like Tyler or like my wife with the tea company. Never would have been able to have done it without her. And so there's some kind of special power in having a business partner. And it's not just delegation of work. It's not just the having the extra manpower. I think it's keeping the spirit and the confidence strong of having somebody to vent, to then get built back up again. Being able to have someone to talk to is just so, at least in my journey, has been so helpful. So I would say that trying to remember that real estate is not rocket science, guys. A lot of people can be successful at it if you just have the belief and you put in the work to get there.
Yeah.
You don't have to be some kind of physics whiz. You don't have to, speak multiple languages even. We're building things that people look at us and be like, wow, I can't believe you're doing that. And that's all just mindset. It's like, yeah, we can. And it's not as hard as you think. So whatever you want to do, whatever you want to pursue, realize that all of it can be done in bite size, one step at a time. And especially in the real estate business, it's not that hard, guys. you can do it too.
Dude, I'm sorry. I was smiling through that, and it's not because what you're saying was bad. It was so inspirational. I just wanted to play some synth music in the background, like, let's bring the lights down low here. Let's get real. Let's kind of have a fireside chat. Dude, but you're right in the business partner kind of side of things. I'll hit you to another one. Is like, you want to go fast, you're going to go alone. But if you want to go far, you're going to go with somebody else. And building out that team is so huge.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I feel like a lot of people never really get to truly experience a meaningful business relationship with that kind of alignment that you're talking about. So,
I've got to sum up the quote that I found the other day that I actually posted about, which is exactly on that. And it's, a miracle is when the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. A miracle is when 1 + 1 = 1,000.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly what it is in this. It's like,
yes.
I'm a 4 at best. Martin's maybe a 5 at best, which equals 9 individually. But when you put us together, we might equal 20 or 30.
Yeah.
Which we could,
Multiplier effects.
Yeah. Synergy. I love that. What's been one of the best resources in your guys' business development?
Ooh. I got a couple that are like easy implementable. Is that the right word? One is using Loom. Loom has been one of the greatest tools.
What is Loom? We heard that the other day.
Yeah. I'd say people don't understand because you hear it and you're like, okay, that's fine. But once you start doing it, you're like, oh my God, my work efficiency just went 10x. And what it is it sounds so simple. What it is it's just something that captures your screen. It records your screen and records your voice as you speak. So you can basically convey more points of information in a more efficient manner because it's as if somebody was sitting next to you watching your screen. So instead of sending emails or instead of sending voicemails or instead of getting on a call, if you can do Looms, not only can you do it on your own time, but people can literally watch anything that you're doing and they can walk you through the steps. So if you're having issues with something on an Excel sheet, or if you're looking at a property that you're scanning for, you're looking through numbers, like you pull it up on your screen and you just start talking as if the person was sitting next to you. And it's such a good way to deliver and package information. As soon as you click the stop button and it stops recording, it automatically just pops up a window with a link, and you just send that link to anybody. Send it in the Slack, send it in through a message app, and then that person can pop it up and see exactly what you're talking about. That has helped a lot.
Wow.
And in conjunction with that, it's also made working with virtual assistants much more efficient. So we each have EAs, executive assistants, in the Philippines. And I had one, like I say, I don't remember, like 8 years ago or something. And it was kind of like, meh, like kind of like I might as well just do the work myself because I'll do it better and faster. But nowadays, virtual assistants in the Philippines are super assistants. Why? Because they got ChatGPT. So now you never have to worry about them not having good language skills. And you have Loom. So anything that I need them to do, I can just Loom it, and it is right there in front of them. They can see exactly what I'm doing, and all they have to do is just go through the motions of what I'm doing. So any type of repetitive work, we've been able to outsource because we just Loom it. We do it one time. We say, hey, this is how I do this. For example, if I want to do lead generation, or I want to send out emails, I want to do a Dripify sequence on LinkedIn, whatever, all of that, you do it one time, have it Loomed, send it to your EA. Boom, they should be able to do it now as well.
This is like God ordained or something, because if we would put the camera over there, there's a whiteboard of all these SOPs that we're putting down on a whiteboard. We just hired a VA.
Yeah.
So we're
good.
We're working through exactly what you're saying right now.
That's awesome. Where's the VA from?
The Philippines. Yeah.
I put together a whole document, which basically is like a step-by-step process, which I'll send you guys. I actually did it for a friend of mine who got a VA, and it's the way that we structure things, the way that we communicate, the way that we do everything. So I'll send you guys
that would be awesome.
You know what? It would be ironic if you guys were investing internationally and not using a VA. So I'm just glad that you're doing that.
Yeah, they've been definitely telling me all the places in the Philippines that we need to go.
Nice.
Yeah. That's awesome. What about you,
Yeah.
Tyler? Best resource in your business development, or one of them?
Martin's stolen that one.
I
That one for
stole
me is 150%, not even in the same comparable as anything else. The second though is social media DMs. Social
Oh.
media DMs have essentially built everything that we have.
Really?
Everything
like you just
from
mean sending people
investors,
private
everything
messages?
Yeah, everything from investors to connections to finding people here and there. Like everything is done in some capacity has sprouted from a social media DM. And when I started realizing that as the common thread, it was like, oh, all of a sudden I'm just looking at like, the team we've got and all the connections we have and the relationships we have. And I start tracing everything back to like its roots, and it's all from random social media DMs, and started really leaning in on that.
Wow.
It feels weird, but like once you start leaning in on it, it's hard to even keep up with. It's astronomical how many people you can reach out to and who you can reach out to by clicking on their profile, saying message and saying, hi, nice to meet you. And all of a sudden you've got access to almost anyone and everyone in the world. It's shocking.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
sorry, Martin, I cut you off a little bit there.
No, you're good. Did you have something to add to that, Martin?
No, I was going to ask, when you say social media DMs, do you have any specific platforms that work well for you?
Twitter was the OG. I'm less active on Twitter now.
I don't think there is. I don't think there's a Twitter anymore.
There's an X.
It's like
X. Sorry, God.
Yeah,
I'm probably the youngest one here, showing my age. It's terrible. X was where it all started, I guess. Where I was, really hammering on. It's now LinkedIn. So I'm sending out near enough. It depends. Some days more, some days less. Around 50 to 60 messages a day. And that's 7 days a week. Everything on autopilot.
Just out of curiosity, what are you even reaching out and saying to these people? Like, hey, I just want to connect. I mean, I get 1,000 of those messages on LinkedIn a day. Is that all it is? Yeah. And you're just trying to pop in people's networks?
It can be anything. And it can be anything. It can be as much as, for instance, when I moved to Newport Beach in California in December, and I didn't know a single soul. I'd never even been to Newport Beach when I moved there. And I arrived and I was sending out around 75 messages a day to everybody that I could find in the Newport area with just like hey, I've just moved here. I'm from Australia. Here's some fun facts about me. I'd love to connect. I don't care what you do. I don't care what it is. I just want to connect. And I would call every single person. Didn't matter if they were a cleaner at a restaurant. It didn't matter if they were in real estate. Doesn't matter because everyone knows everyone else in the city. And then all of a sudden it's like I had 7 coffee meetings a day, 7 days a week with finance guys and real estate guys and brokers and investors. And it's shocking the compounding effect, because at the end of the day, as you said at the start of this, it's like at the end of the day, people are people. Wow. And people have friends and people have connections. And what you can do from a DM is shocking. And never write people off based on what they do, because it's also about who they know and what it can turn into.
So how can people find out more about what you guys are doing and continue to follow your success?
For sure. So we are the Nova Haus across all socials, and I want to spell that out because it is spelt funny. It is NovaHaus. So it's the German spelling of house. The story behind that is it looks cooler. So we are the Nova Haus across all social media platforms: Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, no matter where you are. Our website is thenovahaus.com. And then our emails also are Tyler or Martin at thenovahaus.com.
Awesome.
Yeah, and now just for the last plug here, we're currently building out a fund for 12 assets this year in 2024. The team is already in place. We've already acquired 2, working on the next 10. So we have currently outreach going for bringing on limited partners. Minimum investment is $100,000, and they need to be accredited. And one thing I want to mention is that this is a US-based syndication, so you don't need to worry about what are the legal implications of me investing in Costa Rica. You're investing in the US, and then we own the assets abroad. So you'll get on your tax returns, you'll get a K1, K2, and a K3. It's very simple. We make the process easy. And for anybody that wants to go out and invest in property themselves, we're happy to talk. We have no problem in like kind of sharing our story as you see and helping people do that. But if that's something that you want to do yourself and you'd like to have a professional team kind of hold your hand through that process and still reap those really good annual yields of 15 to 20%, that's where the Nova Haus comes in, and that's where we can be a great partner for you guys.
Awesome. We will put those show notes. We will put those links in our show notes here. Guys, thank you so much for coming on today. This was a fun episode for a lot of reasons. One, to have both of you guys on. You guys have just a really awesome dynamic, and then also your story in their own respective rights and what you guys are doing. So we are excited to continue to see stuff come out from you. And thanks for your time today.
I appreciate you guys. This was awesome.
Yeah, you guys asked some awesome questions and great energy as well. So I'm definitely going to be sharing this podcast more and more. I love what you guys are doing.
Awesome, man. Thank you, guys. As always, excited that you joined us on another episode of the Reinvest Podcast. If this episode added to your tool belt or left you feeling inspired, go ahead and share it with a friend. Stay tuned every Tuesday for new episodes. And if you want to get in touch with us, go to our LinkedIn or Facebook profiles and shoot us a message. Move farther, reach higher, and grow deeper. See you next time.